As the story goes, there was a scientific study participant named Lisa Allen. She was in her mid-30s, was drinking and smoking every day. By the age of 16, I might add, she struggled with obesity for the majority of her life. There was even a point in her 20s where collections agencies were constantly bothering her to recover the $10,000 in debts that she owed. Even by the age of 34, she had never held a job longer than a year. Currently, however, this woman is unrecognizable. She was fit and glowing with the leg muscles of a runner. She looks much younger than she did previously and probably had more endurance than any of the scientists that were so astounded by her. She had no debts now, did not drink or smoke, and held a graphic design job for just over 3 years. In the last 4 years, she had run a marathon, lost 60 pounds, bought a home, and started a master's degree. The reason that the scientists were so interested in her was because they wanted to understand how her habits worked on a neurological level and how she managed to seemingly make all of the bad habits in her life into good ones that benefited her. She didn't realize it at the time, but it was actually the most random goal that she set for herself: to trek across the desert in Egypt after a very unfulfilling, empty vacation there that had the positive ripple effect that changed her entire life. The story you've just heard is in the introduction to this book, The Power of Habit, written by Charles Duhigg. I'm currently working through this book myself, and I found some highly valuable lessons and information that I want to share with you today. A paper published in 2006 by a researcher from Duke University found that more than 40% of our actions performed each day aren't actual decisions, they're habits. Now, if your goal is to improve your habits and by extension your life, you need to be thinking about how you can use the following principles to either start new habits of your own or replace old ones that you've been struggling to kick. And all of the principles I'm about to share with you are based on the habit loop. The habit loop is a 3-step process that occurs within our brains. It starts with a cue, some sort of trigger, like a feeling, a place, or another habit, even another person. For example, getting home from a stressful day at work might be the cue for your brain to engage in a certain habit that you use for relaxation, like eating junk food or drinking or smoking or something like that. The cue tells your brain to begin the routine, which is the second part of the loop. The routine is the actual behavior itself. For example, if your cue is getting home from a stressful day at work, your routine might be to do those things I listed earlier: smoking, drinking, eating junk food, watching Netflix, playing video games, stuff like that. Or it could become meditating, hitting a workout, reading a nonfiction book, journaling, or practicing another skill you're interested in, like playing an instrument or, learning how to day trade or something. Then there's the reward, which is what your brain uses to decide whether this particular routine, this habit, is worth remembering. The reward for those instant gratification habits I mentioned earlier might be a little spurt of dopamine, not really worth it. And to use this information to change your life, you can apply it through a 4-step framework. And the steps are as follows. 1, first ask yourself, what habit do I want to change? Then 2, you have to try different rewards. 3, figure out what your cues or what your triggers are. And finally, make a plan. So let's break it down a little bit. First, what behavior are you trying to change? For example, let's go back to the getting home from work every day, grabbing some junk food and watching Netflix for the rest of the night. In that case, my behavior or my routine in that situation would be eating the junk food and watching Netflix. This is the most obvious part of the loop. After you identify what your routine is, it's time to start trying different rewards. In the context of the habit loop, rewards are what satisfy our cravings. And cravings are hard to identify when they are influencing us. So try to different rewards to see which craving is motivating you to engage in your particular habit. So, for example, if it's something that you do every day, some habit, you're not really going to think about why you're doing it unless you're actively trying to do so. So trying different rewards will help you figure out what you're truly craving, what that habit is truly meant to achieve for you. Are you craving a mental break? Maybe you're hungry. Do you have excess energy you need to get rid of? Or maybe you need a boost of energy. Try a handful of different rewards. Like going back to my junk food and Netflix habit, I could try a coffee after work instead. Maybe I could go to the pantry first thing when I get home and eat an apple. Or I could get home and take a 30-minute nap. And after receiving each one of those things, or the rewards, the next step would be writing down the first 3 things that come to mind. And they can be words, thoughts, emotions, feelings, anything really. And this will help you track how you respond to different rewards over time. After writing down your first 3 things that you think of after receiving your reward, the next step, set an alarm for 15 minutes. When the alarm goes off, ask yourself, do I still feel the same craving? For example, if my craving is gone after coffee, I know my craving was a boost of energy. If an apple fulfills my craving, then my craving was hunger. If a short nap meets my craving, then it was, maybe I needed a mental break or a little rest. And by trying different rewards for yourself, you'll identify what your true craving is, rather than mindlessly engaging in the same behavior you always do without really thinking about it. Now, after you identify what your craving is, it's time to figure out what your cues or triggers are. And cues are usually a bit more challenging to identify because there's so much information coming at us when we're going through our habits. Psychologists have found that almost all behavior cues fit into one of these 5 categories: location, time, emotional state, other people, and the immediately preceding habit, or the whatever you just did before that craving hit you. Now, what I did was, and what you can do, is write down these 5 things in the moment the urge hits you. Where am I? What time is it? What's my emotional state? Who else is around? And what action preceded this urge or this cue? And using this personal data, you and I can identify which of those 5 things is true every time you feel the urge to engage in that habit. In my case, I knew I always wanted to eat junk food and watch Netflix when I got home from work. And that is how you find your cues. I identified that it always happened when I got home from work. So I would attribute that habit to a time of day is about when I get that urge. So after you identify your routine, you know what your true craving is, and you identify what your cues or triggers are, now it's time to make a plan. Now you can create a better routine by planning for your cue and choosing a behavior that delivers the rewards you're craving. And studies repeatedly show that in order to re-engineer your habit loop, you need to have a plan. This plan would be called implementation intentions in psychology, according to the author of The Power of Habit, anyway. Let's return to my snack and watch Netflix habit again. This really used to be a habit of mine that I wanted to change. And I learned that my cue was getting off work. My routine was eating junk food and watching Netflix on the couch. I also learned I wasn't hungry when I got home. I wasn't physically exhausted after work. What I really wanted was to just do something for myself that I enjoyed, after spending all day working for someone else. So I decided to write the following plan. After work, every day, I will go to the gym to work out and listen to music. That was it. That was the only stipulations, and that was the new routine that I chose to stick in that habit loop. So, I'm still getting off work. I'm still getting to do something for myself, after spending the whole day working for someone else. And I just changed the routine and kept the cue the same and the reward the same. So, and I'll be honest, I was not consistent at first. Some days I said, screw it, and I don't feel like working out. That is the last thing I want to do. Other days, I stuck with my commitment to myself, and I drove over to the gym after work. I changed my clothes, popped my earbuds in, and did something to get my heart rate up, whether it be some cardio, lifting weights, whatever. And after doing this for a few days, I found that every time I said, yeah, I don't feel like it, and I went home, I would think later, like, man, I could have gotten, a workout in today. It just doesn't feel good to give up on myself after making that commitment. And on the days that I forced myself to go, I always finished my workout with a sense of accomplishment, and I felt better than I did when I got off work. And, I felt less anxiety, more confidence in myself. I definitely had no problems getting to sleep at night. And eventually, after a few failures and a few skipped workouts, this habit started to become automatic. Since then, it's been quite a few months. And now I actually feel off when I don't go to the gym after work. And I almost feel disappointed when I don't get to go. So that is kind of how I took the 4-step framework to change my habit, and replaced the routine, kept the reward the same, kept the cue the same, and just replaced the habit with something that was more beneficial to me, more aligned with how I wanted to live. Now, with that being said, there are definitely some habits that are much harder to change than eating junk food and watching Netflix after work. Most habits require time and some failures along the way in order to make real changes. But this process at least gives you a place to start, a framework you can use to start taking control of your life and working toward your vision for yourself. Well, that's all I got for you today. I challenge you to take this framework and change a habit of your own for the better. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every Wednesday when I post another one.